Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke, and this is the 13th of March, 2025. So we are at Eclipse Day. Of course, the eclipse isn't happening until really technically tomorrow. It'll be midnight here. And yeah, it's a Thursday, so it's near the end of the week for most people. And I do have a few things I wanted to mention today or talk about, but we'll see who joins. I see we have a couple people on. Alistair's on. Good morning and good afternoon to you, where you are. And yeah, just so I don't repeat myself too much, I'll kind of hang out. And Alex is on. Good morning. Good to see you too. Yeah, it's one of those days that I feel like I'm just on the verge of a headache. So I'm like, I hope I don't fall into into that, because I do have Rouhani appointments this morning. So I do hope all that goes off well. But yeah, it's interesting day. Again, energies that are very, very. Last night I had dreams again, and of course the dreams that I had are kind of the catalyst for what I'm actually going to talk about today a little bit. But it was interesting. Yesterday, I think I mentioned I was going walking with my sister, because usually it's Tuesdays. We'll try to, between her doing caregiving, not really caregiving, but kind of overseeing my mom's stuff. And then, good morning. Hey, Kathleen. Good morning. Good to see you. Yeah, my sister and I were walking yesterday, and we always talk about various family things. But I think I've told you that my sister is she's become kind of hardcore atheist. Like, she's very much not against anything kind of religious and so on. And Leela's on. Good morning. Good to see you again. I know I saw you yesterday evening, virtually at least. So yeah, so my sister and I went walking yesterday, and she kind of casually says to me while we're walking. And again, remind you, she's somebody who, like, if I talk about astrological stuff going on, and Joanne, you're here. Good morning. And I'm going to see you later today. Yeah, she's like, my mom is, my sister's like, she's very, very atheistic, but then she will say to me, so I'll be talking about astrology and stuff. You hear her kind of going, like, like she's listening, but she's kind of like thinking, yeah, okay, whatever. And, and that's her prerogative. But then she kind of says to me, well, I've been following this psychotherapist on Substack, and, she started doing like tarot as a kind of personal therapy. So I ordered myself some of those tarot cards with the meanings written on them. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been doing tarot for like 38 years, and good morning. Good morning. Good to see you. Mango. I'm Mango Witch. Again, I know your name, but I'm just not saying your name publicly, unless you don't care if I do. But yes, good morning. Glad that everybody's here. This is a great little gathering of people. Probably a good time to say that I'm also going to be not live streaming for the next 3 days. I kind of feel like I want to start again on Monday. I don't know. For some reason, I knew I was already not going to do tomorrow and Saturday. And then I was like, okay, I'll start up again Sunday. But then I'm like, I don't know, Sunday, it didn't quite feel right. So I'm like, all right, Monday will be the next one after this, just to let people know where I'm at, the live streaming schedule. But I thought it was hilarious that my sister's like going to get cards now. And I'm like, well, just having the words on it and looking it up in the book isn't really enough. I don't mind either. Is fine. Okay, cool. So it's, yeah. So anyway, I just, it was just really funny to me that it takes somebody that she watches on Substack to make her think that tarot is worth doing. Of course, she is also the one who used to, I remember when her husband, they'd had to move in with my parents temporarily during COVID, because they were basically traveling in an Airstream around the country, and then that became not tenable anymore. So they decided, well, my father was still alive then, and they're like, well, they need help, so we're going to go live there for a bit. And that, trying to live in the same space as my parents, so no coffee till Monday. Well, you can still have coffee, just, with me it would have to be not on this live stream. Let's put it that way, Joanne. Yes, but you are correct. So yeah. So in any case, my sister was. So I remember she had me do a reading for her, because they were looking to buy a house at that point, and she was desperate to get out of my parents' house because yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to get into why that is, but she wanted to leave. And so she had seen a house that was somewhere up really far north in Sussex County. And she had said, oh, we're going to go look at this today. It looks promising. Do a reading for me. So I did a reading for her. And Ellen, good morning or good afternoon. Hello. Good to see you. So I was just like, so I said to her, I said, okay. So I did a reading, and literally the outcome, I was using cartouche. The outcome was Seth. And, so the outcome was Seth. So I was like, this house isn't going to work out. So I did, she says, oh, but I think this is going to be a really great one. So I said, okay. So I did a reading for her a second time. And the outcome was still Seth. And it was just kind of saying her, it was kind of like, it was like a Seth Nepithys. It was like, don't tick this one yet. Like, give it time. Now I knew she was very anxious to get out. She's got, so she was looking at it, and she was just like, so of course they went and they made a bid on the house. She goes, well, I made a bid on it, as if to prove that my reading was like wrong. Right. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, you do what you want. Well, a couple months later, turned out to be a complete waste of time. The whole place, like the septic was all wrong. Everything was wrong. They were going to have to live on the same property as the previous owners, and they were going to have to rent to some other guy. And it was a mess. And they ended up wasting a ton of money over nothing. And then she says to me, she goes, okay, next time I think when you give me a reading, I'll listen to what it actually says. But that always cracks me up about tarot, is that people will say, I don't believe in any of that stuff, but can you do a reading for me? Good morning. Good morning, Suda. Let me just do that. So, yeah, so it was kind of funny. But now she's gotten herself a tarot deck. I think this is the same one that Melissa has. Like when we have our sessions, she has this one with the words on it. But to those of you who have taken a tarot class, that's what I said to my sister. I said that might actually be a little more distracting. You know what I mean? Maybe a bit distracting. So yeah. So in any case, it was just funny though. I said to her, well, we do have a tarot group once a month, so if you want to join us, so maybe once my sister gets her cards. Because, as we all know, laying out the cards, it's not just so simple that you can lay them out and just read them, right? I've had that happen to for folks I read for as well. They've learned the long lesson. Well, exactly, Alex. Yeah, right. People, sometimes if people don't get the outcome they expect, sometimes they consider you a good reader if the outcome is sensible to them. And I get it. Most of the time, if you kind of are just looking for validation that you're on a certain path, that can be the case. But sometimes if you kind of got your heart set on something and the reading's like, maybe not, then people are just like, oh, well, it's just some reading, I did birth year of 2024, 2025 readings for my friends. Good practice. Oh, that's good. That's excellent. Yeah. Definitely the more practice you can get, the better. And yeah, there is some believe, others don't. Exactly. Because some people, it's just a game. Legally, you have to treat it as a game, especially in some places. I know Britain, it's definitely like that, where you have to put a disclaimer, entertainment purposes only, mainly because there are some people who are on the other side of it and will take it way too seriously. They think tarot is kind of like, the hand of God or fate coming down and saying what your absolute fate is, which is not what tarot is meant to be. It's kind of, as my sister discovered, as I told her, and I was just kind of like, really, you don't say? She's like, yeah, it's supposed to be kind of a tool for reflecting what's unconscious. I'm like, yeah, I know. Anyway, it was just kind of funny that she brought that up yesterday. So we'll see where that leads for her. I do hope it would be nice for her to learn. I think my sister actually does have a lot of psychic talent. I think she is a very intuitive person. She does have a lot of dreams. She does have a lot of gut things. But I think for her, it's more of just the connection to traditional religion that really bothers her. Like she doesn't, she's got a bad taste in her mouth for that. And I frankly don't blame her. But to her, that's when she hears the word spiritual, that's her immediate association. And that's the immediate association for a lot of people, actually. But spiritual encompasses way more than traditional religion, as we all know. Contain maybe elements of it, but oftentimes people who are on a spiritual path of their own, they may come from a certain tradition or a certain place, and maybe they even still like and want to retain elements of that. Like, for example, if someone's a Christian, it's not like, okay, you're on a spiritual path, now you're not going to follow Jesus anymore. I mean, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean that you're open to see, what's the bigger picture here? What's the bigger picture behind this one interpretation of things? And this is interesting because this gets into what the topic I was going to bring up today. And the topic, like we've been talking a little bit about cards, you know, sometimes in these live streams, I will talk about a specific card. And today's card that we're going to talk about is the Four of Pentacles. Now, the reason I'm going to be talking about this card is because last night's dreams, okay, the dreams continue. I'm not going to go into the whole dream, but it was basically one. And again, I feel like the library where I grew up, where my mother actually worked, the kind of my experience of when she used to be working this backspace doing shelving and stuff. And I was there like on my break and stuff from school. And I would sit in the stacks and read all day. That's what I did when I was with her. That was when I was too young to be on my own still. I was like maybe 8, 9 years old. And so it's kind of like a vision of that. But it was also, there was some kind of social event, and I felt like I kept changing outfits. I must have changed outfits like 2 or 3 times. But then I got to a point where I was feeling very uneasy, and I was like, okay, it's really time for me to go. But it was like I couldn't go until then. It was like I was a security guard type person securing the perimeter of a place before. Like I was on duty until 3 o'clock. Okay, I was on duty until 3 o'clock. And then at that point, and I was a little worried that I was going to be dragged out beyond 3 o'clock because I felt like, no, at that point, like I wanted to leave sooner, but it was like, okay, I can't leave yet. Now, I'm sure those of you in the dream workshop are like, oh, we already kind of have an idea what this is about. But it made me think of the idea of Four of Pentacles is my birth card. Yes, it is. And right, because Four of Pentacles is Sun in Capricorn. Correct. Yes, that is your birth. Yeah, absolutely. That is your birth card. And it's interesting that we were talking about Capricorn and Capricorn energy yesterday. So the Four of Pentacles was interesting there because the way I interpret that, first of all, I kind of see that as whenever I see clocks in dreams, especially since working with Azrael, I always feel like it's giving me a timetable. Like if he shows me somebody and says, oh, it's 11:30 or it's 10:30, like I feel like they're very close to midnight, you know. We've heard the doomsday clock, right? I don't want to be so grim. But I often feel like it means somebody's nearing the end of something. For me, being at 3 o'clock, I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense because I'm not at my noon peak. I'm past that. But 3 o'clock is also kind of a peak in and of itself. Like oftentimes that's when the day is the warmest and the brightest. So, but it's not really, we're not close to midnight yet. We've got time. So I was like, okay, so there's that. But I do feel like this is not only getting away from, the move that I want to make or that I'm going to make. It's not actually, at this point, it is a move I'm going to make. It's not like, oh, maybe one day I'll do it. Now the wheels are in motion for that. But it's like, but I almost feel like it's like I wanted to leave before that. And it was kind of like, no, this is the thing you have to finish before you leave. And I feel like that's kind of the energy of it. Like you have to secure the perimeter somehow. So this made me, and literally when I think about securing a perimeter, that's what I think about is the Four of Pentacles. Because if we look at it, here's the curly deck version of it. This is known as the Power card. And as you can see, it's kind of like this fence that's around things, right? We have this idea of, and you have these triangles that are both of the different, well, they represent the 4 elements really that are in there. But also the up and down triangles can also represent masculine and feminine energy as well. So this is about, so the Power card is about kind of being in that safe place. And yeah, once again, we see Sun and then Capricorn down here. If anybody has this deck, Crowley does kind of, well, actually Lady Frida Harris, who drew these, does kind of put the symbols in there. You know, if you can make them out, she does put the planet, they do put the planetary and the zodiac sign within there. And yes, so the Four of Pentacles, again, is one of those cards. So if we're talking about tarot interpretation, that can go either way. Because a lot of time, because there's always a spectrum of interpretation. And this is what I was also trying to explain to my sister yesterday. I said, reading the meanings off of the deck with it written on there, I said it can be very confusing. I said, like the Seven of Cups can mean that you should use your imagination at possibilities. It can also mean you're freaking delusional. I mean, but it all depends on the context. What are the cards surrounding it? What does it say? I mean, if there's other things around it that indicates that you might not be seeing things in balance or clearly, then maybe you want to look at that interpretation. If everything else looks good, then maybe it's just saying, you want to reach out and you want to have certain possibilities. A lot of people would interpret that card as having to do, like if somebody's asking about career or work, like doing something virtual or online or remotely, like Seven of Cups. Sometimes people connected in with that. So yeah, so a lot of the things you see in the books or written on the cards aren't always helpful. Now with the Four of Pentacles, yeah, okay. So if we look at the Rider-Waite-Smith card, okay. So drawn by Pamela Coleman Smith, we have, okay, so as I've mentioned, we have the guy standing on the two pentacles. He's holding one and he's got one on his head. Okay, so this is like keeping, if the pentacles are your cash, so to speak, they're your coinage, you're keeping it close to you, right? And you notice his arms are folded. You know, he's holding it like this, like he's like almost cradling it like a child. He's holding it. And well, actually, no, he's got his hands like this, you know, like on the pentacle. He's holding it this way, and but his feet are on top of the other one, and then there's one sitting on top of his crown. Now the within I always get the name of this deck wrong. Spirit Within. I always want to say Within Spirit, but it's Spirit Within Tarot. We see a very similar kind of an image. You see the person, this person's cradling it. It's like they're the four pentacles that they're holding. Okay. And in the Cat Tarot, the Mystical Cats Tarot, which is my favorite, you have the cat here with this little gazebo, and behind him are all these, he looks kind of, has this kind of, you know, resting cat face, right? And, but he's got all these toys behind him. And his back is to his toys in this one. But it's almost like he's guarding the entrance to this little gazebo where all his cat toys are piled up. And also, we will mention the one from the Osho Zen Tarot, which is this one. That is the Miser. Okay, so you see this woman with the wall and her jewels. And again, she's a rather unpleasant looking woman. She doesn't look like she's, doesn't look particularly like she's willing to share, right? So, okay, so we take all of this kind of stuff together. And as I mentioned, astrologically, we are talking about Sun in Capricorn, okay? So this is that kind of a card. And I think, and the word on it that is used in the esoteric decks is power. So, okay, so we want to look at the Four of Pentacles in a couple of different ways. Now, if we look at it, typically people associate it with the negative meaning, which is being stuck. Having to hang on to your pentacles like this means this is mine. Amma used to tell a story about there was a like a poor person who was in the hospital and was whether or not this person, I think this person was like passing away or something was happening, but this person right to the end had their fists clenched. And they couldn't pry the fist open. And finally, when the person passed away and they managed to get the fingers open, they were clinging on to like their last coin. Like they weren't going to do that. And Joanne says, oh, yay. Yeah. There's this idea, and really the meaning of her full story, which I'm just not remembering the whole story at this point, but it was just the idea that you can't take it with you, right? At some point, we can't, yeah, you can't take it with you. So so sometimes we are hanging on to it, and it's like, is it worth hanging on to? Is it worth taking? Should we take the risk? Okay, just kind of like we think about business, okay? Because Capricorn is very Capricorn Mercury, you know, kind of this very businessy kind of idea. And so sometimes what you do is you invest. You know, you invest. You spend more than you're getting in initially because you expect an ROI, a return on your investment. Right. So in market, I think in sales and marketing, there's a certain markup that you do on products to make sure that you are getting a profit margin back from it. You know, basic economics of business and so on and so forth. That you have to value something. We're back to the value term in the right way. So Four of Pentacles, though, number fours are cards of. There's a sense of stability. There's a very strong sense of stability to fours. So when you're at the Four of Pentacles, then that is like, you know, you're in a secure place, but you're not necessarily building on what you have. The Four of Pentacles is saying, okay, I have this, and I'm trying to hang on to what I want. Like they're calling it the miser. Sometimes that what we could consider miserly can be frugality. It can just be like, okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to have enough, so I'm going to conserve what I have, right? So the Four of Pentacles does not have to be a negative in that sense. And occasionally, as we have seen, as we go through readings, that sometimes what it actually means is, yeah, maybe right now you do want to conserve what you have and not try to branch out yet. Because because for the moment, you might just want to be in this place. In the same way that the Four of Swords, which is also called the Truce card, is like, okay, it's a place where you're stopping and taking a breather, right? I'm going to step back, take a breather, and I'm not going to move ahead. So, but as these other two cards sometimes imply, they can also sometimes, that's when we can get into that habit of, when we have enough, thinking we never have enough. So we hang on to things, and we don't want to let go of the things we have, because we may feel that in having those things that we are, that we can't let go of those things, because then we might not have anything. The idea that if I go through this money, then I'm not going to have what I need, or how much resource do I have? And as we know with Pentacles, the resources that we have are not always just about money and how much money we have. It can also just be about the other ways in which we define abundance. In terms of, like, the Four of Pentacles could mean I've built a wall around me, and I'm right now, I feel comfortable and safe in my space, but I'm also not connecting with other people. Whereas, like, connections with other people can be part of your abundance, right? The Four, negatively too, that sometimes that card has to do with control. The way in which we, when we have something, the way in which we want to retain control over it. Now, what's interesting is I took out the tarot handbook, because obviously the Four of Pentacles falls on the Emperor constellation. And okay, so what do I mean by that for people who might not know or might not remember? In the tarot, the numbers often have this meaning that connect in with each other. And as I mentioned, fours have to do with stability. But the number 4 in the major arcana is the Emperor card. The other card that's on that constellation is the one that adds up to 4, 1 plus 3, and that's the Death card. Okay, so you've got Capricorn and you've got Scorpio. And what's interesting is that both Capricorn and Scorpio astrologically tend to be connected to endings, actually. Because if the Four of Pentacles represents a state of not changing, but they're on a constellation that is ultimately about things having to change. So I think there's almost like a subtle message in there of, like, okay, you're in this spot for right now, just like with the Four of Swords, which is called postponement in the one deck, right? Okay, this is where you are now. This is where you've stopped. This is where you're taking a breather. This is where you have these things around you. But the question is whether or not you need to stay there. And it's different for different people. Sometimes there's a period of time where, yeah, don't move ahead, just stay put, just stay where you are right now. Other times it may be saying, okay, have you stayed here for too long? Is it time to move on? Is it time to do the next thing? So I was going to read to you a little bit about the Emperor constellation, which in her book, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this correctly, is in the shape of a crown. And so at the bottom of the crown, the part that would be downwards, the Fool. Actually, she puts the Fool in here too, which is interesting. The Emperor and Death. And then at the top, she has 4 of Swords, 4 of Cups, 4 of Wands, and 4 of Discs or Pentacles. Okay. So I'll just read this. It says, the Emperor constellation reveals the principle of personal power and leadership, and asks us to assess and demonstrate the qualities of leadership that maintain our own power and empower others. By solving problems through negotiation or truce, the 4 of Swords, while coming from a place of emotional fulfillment or luxury, the 4 of Cups, and communicating a sense of wholeness or completion, the 4 of Wands, we empower ourselves and others, the 4 of Discs, or the 4 of Pentacles. Externally, the Emperor archetype manifests in leadership that is strong and fearless, yet unattached to outcomes. To let go and move forward freely, which is the Death card, we need peace of mind or resolution, 4 of Swords, and a sense that everything is complete or finished, the 4 of Wands. To initiate something new from a place of courage and no fear, which is the Fool, we need to own and demonstrate our own power, the 4 of Discs, and follow what has emotional resonance, the 4 of Cups. So I thought that was an interesting way to look at both sides of it, and kind of to make it very empowering rather than something that's negative. If the 4 of Pentacles comes up and says, oh, well, you're just stuck. Because it doesn't have to mean that. It can just mean that this is this is the place where you feel secure. This is where you feel like you have your power. I was thinking about that the other day with the whole idea. I think somebody had popped on the live stream yesterday that was trying to proselytize, and I was just like, yeah, this is not the place for that. And I often think about the difference between proselytizers and true believers is that the true believer is going to be firm in their beliefs, right? Like if you say to me, oh, I disagree with what you believe. I think you're wrong because I believe in this, this, and this. I'm going to go, okay, you know, say whatever you want. I mean, I have my beliefs for a reason, and I feel very set in those. It's not a stubbornness. This is how it is. It becomes an issue, I think, when you feel like you have to convince somebody else. In other words, this is my truth, and it's supposed to be your truth too. So because what that betrays is that somehow if you have to talk over me and say, no, this is the way it is, that's the mark of insecurity. And I also thought about this with regard to the interpretation of cards, kind of thinking about what my sister's doing, is I said, yeah, these cards do have different meanings. And the question is, when you look at the card, I think your initial fear reaction is important here too, because if you get something like the Four of Pentacles and you think, oh my God, am I being stuck? Like, if your immediate interpretation is the negative one, or sometimes even though if it's the positive one, if you're trying to read something into it, maybe if the other cards around it aren't that way, I don't know. We kind of, that's where I feel like the instinct piece comes in. Is this, because the question next will be, well, is this card saying that we need to establish our own security and our own boundaries and need to feel comfortable? Or is this card saying, okay, yeah, you've been here and it's time to move forward? And again, the presence of, we were talking yesterday about the Fool card, the presence of the Fool card could mean, like if you get the Four of Pentacles where you are and your outcome is the Fool, it's kind of like, okay, maybe it is time to move on. Maybe it is time to take a risk, to invest something, whether that investment is financial or whether that investment is some aspect of you and what you're doing. But oftentimes when you look at the cards, it's like when you have reactions to certain things. Certainly if you got the Death card, then it would be the idea of, okay, it's time to have a release. It's time to move forward and move on to the next thing. Like there's a transformation that's going on. So in interpreting this card, it's going to be a matter of, do you have other cards of stasis around you, or do you have cards of transformation? And the nature of the question is going to matter too, because if somebody's feeling stuck and their reading is all full of these, it might be like, well, maybe you're at a point where you need to make a decision about what to do next. But again, the outcome, or sometimes it's just saying, ask yourself why you're not satisfied with what you have, because that's another possible angle of it too. Are you satisfied with what you have? And again, if you see a lot of cards of restlessness around there, like Knight of Wands, like especially a lot of Knight energy, Knight of Wands, Knight of Swords, it may be like, okay, are you trying to, are you in a secure place and trying to jump too fast somewhere else because maybe you have a restless nature. And many of us do. I mean, that's almost ingrained in us socially. We have this thing of, I have to, in order to be involved, we have this thing of like, if I take a day and I do absolutely nothing, there's the sense of, well, I have to be doing something. I have to be producing something. I have to, that's the kind of ingrained knee jerk. Oh, I have time off. Oh, good. This is a time to clean the closets and take this apart and to do this and to do that. And it's not necessarily that those things are bad, but if you're saying fly baby bird, yep. Yeah, it's like, sometimes it's just, I don't know. We sometimes feel compelled because then otherwise we've wasted a day, right? I've wasted, like that's the resource that we've wasted that we want to hang on to, right? Is our time. Like, oh, I could have spent today doing all of these things. And again, but sometimes you do need to pause. Sometimes you do need to pause. And that is something that's been coming up in a lot of people's readings that I've been doing this month. I've been doing a lot of readings this month, a lot more than usual for this time of year. Probably because of just all the changes that are going on collectively. And honestly, I just feel like it's what a lot of people's readings are saying is, yes, change is coming, but you have this pause. You have this place where you want to stop, check your perimeter, make sure you have what you need, make sure you've adequately closed up the old so that when you've moved into the new, that all of a sudden the old doesn't go hi and reappear in a place where you're not expecting to see it or where you don't want to see it, right? So, yeah, so sometimes there is, when we're making changes, or when changes afoot, sometimes, see, that would be more of the negative side of the emperor too. Like we feel like we have to run in and take charge of something. Because Aries energy is Mars energy, and Mars energy is when you have an energy that's very volatile, like when you have something that's very fiery. The fire energy can go either way. Fire energy can be something that that inspires us and that makes us move. Fire can be like, okay, I don't need this thing anymore, and I'm setting fire to it and I'm burning it up, right? I'm in the sense of almost purification, which is a term I hate, but you know, it's just, but nonetheless, there's this idea of sometimes we need to, you know, burn up the rubbish and get it out of our lives, right? And fire can also be something that when it's ignited suddenly, it can spread very rapidly and cause destruction. So how are we using that fire energy, right? Now, Pentacles cards, of course, are Earth element. They're not fire element. But again, if you see yourself surrounded by a lot of fiery energy with that, the question then becomes, and a lot of it depends on, and Suda says sage advice. Yeah, it does depend on where it is, and if you've got a lot of fire and then you've got the Four of Pentacles as your outcome, then it might. I knew what you meant there. Actually, that was kind of yeah. Anyway, but sometimes it might be saying, okay, you're anxious to get going, but you need to pause. Need to make sure that you're on a sure footing before you take that next step, that you're not stepping into empty air and you don't fall down, right? Because even the Fool card, I mean, when you look at the Fool card, there is, there's the guy who's like kind of like, yay, and he's kind of standing on the edge of a cliff. And depending on which version of the card, it can be, look more scary than others. But oftentimes there's a little dog or a little animal there that's like next to him, like barking at him or trying to pull him back. Because the idea is just like, okay, you can do that, but be careful. Be careful about it. So, yeah, so I'm going to do some astrology cards with this. That's what I feel like doing with this Four of Pentacles, just to kind of see what the to try to kind of flesh this out a little bit and see what we get with this kind of a thing. And I think I'm going to flip cards today. Oh, yep. And we start with Mars, which I think is really interesting. I'm just talking about Mars. And whoa. Okay. Oh, pardon me for a second. Dropping things on the floor. And one more card for our outcome. And let me just pop this off. I don't know if you can hear my phone going off. Okay. Wow. Okay. This reading is really interestingly spot on. So yeah, so we're starting with Mars. Okay. The appropriate use of force. Okay. And we're talking about it in the context of security. So yeah, so there's the idea of when we are motivated, when we are restless, when we feel like we need to be taking action, because Mars is very action oriented. It's Aries energy, and it's also connected to Scorpio. Okay, it's connected to both of them, which is interesting because the Emperor constellation is Aries and Scorpio. Okay, I've been musing on so much of this recently. A lot to take in, but helpful. Oh, good. I'm glad it is helpful, because yeah, there's a whole lot that's going on right now that's going to translate differently for different people in different situations. And the question then becomes like, yeah, what does this mean for us? And so, yeah, so this is this idea of action, and Mars also has to do with something that's very passionate. That's something that's very deeply felt. And I think, so we are, and the thing is, the environment here that we have is the Grand Cross. We're being provoked. Okay, we've been seeing this card a lot, the Provoker card. Our Mars energy is being provoked. So there is that sense of unease. There's that sense of like, I need to be doing something. I need to be taking action, do I hide? Do I run out and fight? Fight or flight, right? Do I do this? Do I do that? Like what do I need to be doing right now? Or am I just stuck in the same place and I don't know where I'm going and I don't know what I'm doing? Same house, full hermit mode over here is what Suda's saying. Yeah, and I get it too, because remember yesterday we were talking, I think the hermit came up, and I think there's a lot of us who are just feeling like, okay, maybe I'm not ready for prime time yet, and and again, there could be a lot of reasons for that. I don't want to sound, because in a general reading, I realize everybody has individual circumstances where people might say, well, that's nice that it's time for a change. However, there is all of this to tidy up, or this to consider that I can't just simply walk away from. So that's perfectly well understood too. That everybody has to decide what this means for them. But yeah, what we're not seeing, which is interesting. Alex says, I've been battling that question the last week. How do I take action for my goal? Do I even do it now? Right. Like, what do we, well, there's a reevaluation that's going on. And that may be part of the reason that we are being told not to act yet, in spite of the fact that, yeah, there's this hidden fire here. Now, fire element, when it shows up in the astrology cards, means things that happen very suddenly. Okay. It has to do with sudden change, with things that are happening. And as things change suddenly, the question is, how do we respond to it? What are we doing with that fire energy? Yeah, I mean, I think this is really interesting. I thought that we have, like, we've got fire on both sides. We got Mars and we got fire on both sides of the provoker, which is the Grand Cross. Because this is like, this is like poking the hornet's nest. What is it that we need to do here? And our advice, though, is Saturn. Speaking of Capricorn, Saturn return. Saturn return is a card of, first of all, two things. One, getting rid of illusions. Like, if we're in this Piscean space, right? So this could even point to the move towards Aries. Like, we need to wait until Neptune moves into Aries, which I think the first time that happens is later this. I can't remember if it's the end of this month or the end of April, but it's coming up soon. And this may be one of the factors that's telling us, don't make any decisions quite yet. Saturn's going to move into Aries too, out of Pisces. But it may be, so we're kind of getting prepared for that fire space. And I just think, like, at the moment, we may feel stuck, or we may see all this change going on and saying, okay, what am I going to do? But Saturn return says this is a correcting course. We want to use these retrogrades to correct course, to look at everything, to check all of the elements of what we're doing and saying, is this sound? Is this, and if you have a plan for the future, does your instinct tell you, yeah, you're ready to lean into this? Or it's not that you have to let go of your dream, but maybe it's like, maybe give it some time, because Saturn has a lot to do with time as well. If we think about Saturn as Chronos, has to do with time. So Saturn return here is saying, yeah, there's things to be considered, and there may not be a shortcut. March 30th, Neptune ingress into Aries. Thank you, Alex. Yes, I thought it was at the end of this month, and that is going to be around the time of the solar eclipse. I think the solar eclipse is the day before. So this is interesting that this is all coming up. Actually, it's coming up with respect to the blood moon lunar eclipse, which is happening tonight. And yeah, we are moving into this space, and we're also going to be moving into Aries season too. Next week, we move out of Pisces and into Aries in terms of where the sun is going to be. So as we're moving into this kind of energy, again, everything we've seen is pointed to mid-April as the time to say, okay, you may have some more clarity by then to make a decision about where you're going. Now, our outcome card is Taurus, which, okay, Taurus is not Capricorn, but they are both earth signs. They are both cards that have to do with our sense of security. They have to do with our sense of where we are, what we're doing, right? Taurus is about figuring out what our resources are, what we have. So it's like, before you make the change, stop and look at everything that you have and make sure that you have all of the pieces, because it may be a case of you don't want to move ahead, or you want to, or okay, maybe different. I'll put this differently. You may have resources that you don't realize that you have. And it could be that you may be looking at something right now in terms of what you have right now. And Four of Pentacles to me is very much a card of what we have right now in this moment of stability. What do I have right now? But there may be something else that you're going to have. There may be another resource. Positively, if we think of the Four of Pentacles as a card of power, okay? And Sudha says March 29th is Hindu New Year on the lunar calendar. Yes, that's right. And mid-April is New Year on the solar calendar. Go figure, I celebrate both. Yeah, and it's interesting that they fall right around that time, right? Yes, you're right. And I cannot for the life of me remember the name of it, but I know there's a name for those celebrations. And actually what's interesting about the New Year's, the Hindu New Year's, is that oftentimes there's a period of a very spiritual time where one does make certain preparations. Oftentimes it can be a time for like Shani Puja and things like that, where you are, because there's this element of paying tribute to, as you have the, so you've got the lunar and the solar new year coming into their new space. And also, though, I know in Hinduism that eclipses are not considered, like there's no puja that goes on during an eclipse, right? The temple is closed during the eclipse, and then once the eclipse is over, then things reopen again. So yeah, there's a whole lot that's going on, and certainly eclipse time from that perspective is a time when we need to be when they will advise Ugadi and Putandu. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, because I couldn't remember I knew Ugadi I'd heard before. I hadn't heard the other term, but yeah, that's so okay. But oftentimes that's what the astrologers will advise. They will say, well, this is a time to do service to others. This is a time for more spiritual practice. Like if you are somebody who has a mantra, to do japa and to do all that kind of stuff, that's the time to do it. And today is holy. Today, yes, that's right. And thank you for bringing that up, because today is the feast of Krishna, right? And holy looks like it's a lot of fun. With everybody throwing all the colors around and so forth. So yeah, and Krishna, of course, and interestingly, Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu. And Vishnu, of course, is the preserver. And what are we talking about? Four of Pentacles energy, trying to preserve, right? And I just got something on top of my head as soon as I just said that. So that's interesting. Yes, happy Holi, lots to celebrate. Yes, and happy Holi to everybody who celebrates today. I lose track of what day it is, but it's but you're right. That is what's happening at this time. But yeah, frequently it is a time, and so as we know, if we're thinking about it from the Vedic perspective, there are certain times when it's more auspicious to move ahead and maybe less auspicious to move at other times. So yeah, we are in a period of great change, and I almost feel like it's saying, let these changes play out and then see what you're going to do with your plan. It's not telling you to junk your plan unless you really, something deep inside of you says this is wrong. In which case, in Pisces season, really probably any time, but particularly then, your intuition is your friend. Your intuition that tells you this. Sorry to derail, but back to Four of Pentacles. Almost make space for new resources. Well, yes, and that's actually a good point too, Sudha, because there has been a lot about emptying out too. We've talked about emptying the vessels, right? And so if you want to have an empty vessel, you have to, if you want to bring that new couch into your house, you have to have space for it, right? If you already got all this other stuff in there, you're not gonna be able to fit it in, right? I'm just using that as a stupid example, but yeah, you have to, exactly. So oftentimes, yeah, this may be a time of cleaning up and clearing out. And there's the one of the runes, I'm trying to remember which one it is. I think it's Nauthiz, which is the rune of Saturn, interestingly enough. But one of the messages is, when fishermen can't go to sea, they repair nets. So the idea is, yeah, maybe this is a time to be, getting things again, we're reevaluating what stuff stays, what stuff goes, as we move towards the new track. But also, there may be some things we're undecided about, and maybe we need to wait till we have enough information to do that. So anyway, so that was my little spiel for today, and I hope this was helpful. Just to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, it kind of started from my dream, and then but it did get me on the track of thinking about the Four of Pentacles. So I thought that way, getting into that, especially since Capricorn and Saturn seem to be coming up a lot. Like I said, we had the Saturn Cazimi yesterday, and generally just this idea of Saturn being reborn into this new energy, which totally makes sense because, like I said, later in this year, Saturn is moving into Aries. So it's going to be a different Saturn. It's going to be a different face of Saturn. And like anything, it can go, Saturn and Aries can be really, though, that is kind of that kind of energy. It's that energy of Aries is that active energy. I want to move ahead. I want to do stuff. I'm inspired. And Saturn says, okay, but what's your plan? So very helpful. Thanks. Oh, you're welcome. And thank you. Oh, yes, you're welcome, Suda. And like I said, this weekend is going to be kind of a quiet one for me. I actually moved the astrology class to April 5th. So I will be advertising that soon. I just didn't feel like this weekend. I just feel like I needed to clear the calendar. So I will see you guys all again Monday. I hope you have a great weekend. And, you know, if it all goes well, and obviously you guys know who work with me know where I am and can reach out to me if you need me. So take care and have, thank you. And